you're never going to feel like your audience is big enough. And going through the whole process of launching will actually grow your audience because that is what forces you to show up intentionally. It forces you to show up consistently. It forces you to show up with content that is the right fit for the right people. And that's how your audience grows. Welcome to Imperfect Action. I'm Steph Taylor. For years, I read all the books, downloaded all the freebies, and did all the courses. But it wasn't until I started taking imperfect action that my business had its first $1 million year. Imperfect action is about doing things before you're ready, prioritizing consistent action over perfect action, and moving forward, even when you're not sure you're doing it right. On this show, you can expect mindset advice, actionable marketing tips, and strategies to build a business that brings you more profit, more freedom, and even more joy. Are you on the list to get my daily Biz Boosters? Every day, I'll send you a bite-sized prompt designed to help you grow your business in a more intentional way. Sign up at stephtaylor.co/DBB or at the link in the show notes. Hey, welcome back to Imperfect Action. This is episode 676. Today, we're talking about launch profits when you have a tiny audience. Now, if you are thinking of launching an online course, a group program, a membership, or literally any other digital product or online offer, but the thing that's holding you back or that is limiting you or challenging you is that you have a small audience, this episode is for you. Now, I'm going to start by covering off on some of the biggest mistakes that I see business owners with a small audience making when it comes to launching, and then I'm going to share a couple of ways that I think you can maximize your launch profits when you do have that tiny audience, because we all have to start somewhere, right? So, biggest mistakes that I see people making when they have a small audience when it comes to launching. The first big mistake is waiting until their audience is big enough to launch their new offer. And this happens mostly when it's the first time somebody is launching something new and they're like, oh, I want to launch this and I want to make sure I'm getting lots of sales at the launch. So I'm just going to wait until I have more people in my audience. But the problem is you're never going to feel like your audience is big enough. And going through the whole process of launching will actually grow your audience because that is what forces you to show up intentionally. It forces you to show up consistently. It forces you to show up with content that is the right fit for the right people. And that's how your audience grows. And one of the key pieces of feedback that I hear over and over and over again from my Launch Magic students is that once they started showing up and sharing that strategic content for the launch of their course or their program or whatever it was they were launching, they also, as a side effect, started getting more inquiries from potential clients for their services because that content was growing their audience, it was resonating with the right people, and those people wanted to work with them. The second big mistake is launching once and then putting their course or their membership or wherever into a shop on their website, or it just lives there. There's a call to action from your homepage, join my course, join my membership. And that's the extent of the sales process. Now, launching is a way to sell your offer. It's not just something that happens the first time you put it out into the world. I know. It's very counterintuitive. A launch is not just the one thing that happens the one time when you create that thing and put it out there for sale the very, very first time. And if you don't want to live launch your offer a few times a year, if you don't want to do the whole webinar, cart open, cart close, deadline, all of that thing, that's fine. But I still recommend live launching it at least once or twice because that's going to give you a really good insight into the messaging and the strategy that's going to work to sell it before you make it available all the time. Mistake number 3, putting all of their eggs into the social media basket. The thing with social media is that you are very much at the whim of the algorithm, and your content only reaches such a small percentage of your followers. Yes, even on Threads. And I will do a whole other episode about Threads another day because there's a lot to unpack there. But with all social media platforms, you're very much at that whim of their algorithm. So trying to build your social media audience isn't necessarily going to be the best use of your time. And a better use of your time would be building your email list, creating some kind of strategic lead magnet that's designed just for this particular offer that you are launching, nurturing your email list, right? So once somebody's downloaded that lead magnet, the freebie that's going to get them onto your list, then nurturing those people with the content that's going to move them closer to buying from you. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Mistake number 4, using their content to build hype in a launch. Nobody else is going to be as excited about your offer as you are. Excitement isn't what sells, and trying to get your audience excited in the hopes that they will buy from you, that is never going to convert as well as strategic content that's designed to nurture your audience so that they're ready to buy when doors open. Mistake number 5, not giving a long enough runway before doors open. So this is where, when I say your audience is going to grow as you launch, if you give yourself that 60 to 90 days of lead up where you are sharing strategic content before doors open, that's going to start to grow your audience with the right people as well as nurture them. And a lot of the time, there's this big misconception that if we just create the right offer, then all we need to do is find the right people who want what we're selling. And most of the time, even the right people who want what we're selling, they still have a little journey they need to go on before they'll be ready to buy. And I call this little journey the magician's gap. There's a little gap between where they are right now and where they need to be ready to buy. And your lead up, the content that you're sharing in the lead up to doors open is helping them to bridge that gap. It has nothing, you're not talking about your offer. You're not telling them something exciting is coming. You are sharing strategic content that is shifting them to where they need to be. And that is why I usually would suggest at least 60 days of that strategic content in the lead up to doors open. It's going to be longer. It might be 90 days if you have a smaller audience, or if there is a larger magician's gap, a larger gap that they need to bridge to be ready to buy. Okay, so the key idea that I want you to think about as we are going through today's episode is I want you to think of your launch as a rinse and repeat process. It's not just something you do once. It's something you can do multiple times a year with the same offer, each time bringing in a cash injection, because launching is a sales process. It is one way to sell your offers. It is a vehicle for a sales system which is a strategic, repeatable process for selling your offers. For example, we have Launch Magic, my signature course that I created back in 2020, and I've updated it since, but we launch it twice per year. And each time that we launch it, we have a limited time kind of lead up where we're sharing free content to nurture the audience and bridge that magician's gap. We have a limited time promotional period, cart open period, and a deadline to sign up when doors close. We also have Offer Less, Sell More, which unlike Launch Magic is always open. Somebody can sign up for Offer Less, Sell More at any point in time, whereas Launch Magic, you can only sign up for it twice a year. But we still do launches for Offer Less, Sell More. So we still have that free content to nurture the audience, podcast episodes. I have a webinar that I've taught for it. We still have a limited time promotional period where if somebody signs up in that cart open period, they get bonuses. And we still have a deadline. Even though the deadline isn't doors closing, it's bonuses expiring. And this is how you start to scale an offer, by launching it again and again. So when I first launched the podcast launch plan, which is one of my offers, it's a $250 offer. The first time I launched it, I think it made around $2,000 to $3,000 in sales that first launch. And 12 months later, by launching it over and over again before I put it on an evergreen sales process, 12 months later, it made $800,000 in sales from just repeating those launches and then taking that strategy and putting it into an evergreen automated process. But it would never have scaled if I hadn't done those live launches multiple times. I think we did 7 or 8 live launches in total. Now, how can you then, if you have a tiny audience right now, how can you start to maximize those launch profits? I'm going to share 4 things you can do. Firstly, focus on building your email list with the right people. Building your audience on social media, whatever platform it is, it's like building a house on sand. And at any point, the algorithm can change and your audience can just wash away. Whereas your email list, that's an audience that you own. And even, I've got 37,000 followers on Instagram. And every time we do a launch, most of the sales still come from our emails to our email list. But that's also because I've spent a lot of time growing this email list with the right people. We've got offer-specific lead magnets, which is a freebie that somebody can opt in for by giving us their email address. But they're not a shiny freebie that everybody wants. It's a freebie that is the right fit for the right person. Now, if you go back to episode 674, I talk a little bit there about how to create a lead magnet for a specific offer, a lead magnet to fill your email list with the right people for one particular offer. If you want the direct link to that episode, send me a DM on Instagram. I'm there at stephtaylor.co. If you send me the number 674, just in numbers, numerals, I will send you a DM with the link to listen to that episode directly, so you don't have to go and look for it. The second thing you can do to maximize your launch profits with a tiny audience is being intentional with the content you share in the lead up to the doors open. So I talked about the magician's gap a little bit earlier in this episode. Basically, there is a big gap between where your audience is right now and where they need to be ready to buy your offer. And until you bridge that gap for them, it's going to be a whole lot harder to actually sell to them. For example, with my podcast launch plan offer, it's a course on launching a podcast. Somebody who is the right person for the podcast launch plan, they're probably thinking, yes, I want to launch a podcast, but they believe that the equipment is too expensive or that they're not tech savvy enough to start a podcast. And until they can see that actually the equipment can be really cheap and you can start a podcast without being tech savvy, they're never going to buy the podcast launch plan. I can get them really excited about launching a podcast, but if they're still thinking, oh, I'm not tech savvy enough to do it, then they're not going to take action. They're not going to buy. They're not going to start their podcast. And this gap exists with literally any offer. It's not just with courses and memberships and programs. It's with literally any other offer that you are selling. The only difference is that when you are live launching, you can help your audience to bridge that gap in real time. You can take them on a journey in real time with you. And basically the entire purpose of your launch is to bridge this gap. It's to help your audience to make a decision about whether your offer is right for them or not. So having a longer runway, allowing that 60 to 90 days and sharing content that bridges this gap, that's going to help you to convert your audience a whole lot better. And I'm running a free event where we're kind of deep diving into this. I'm running this free event. It's only for people who are on the Launch Magic waitlist. And I'll be teaching you module 1 of Launch Magic for free live on Zoom, where we can start to uncover the magician's gap for your offer. I am capping it at 100 people. It's first in, first served, and there won't be a replay. So if you want to get access to this event, you need to jump onto the waitlist. It's happening at the end of July. So if you're not on the Launch Magic waitlist, send me a DM on Instagram. Send me the word magic. I'm there at stephtaylor.co. Or if you prefer to just opt in the old school way, you can go to stephtaylor.co/magic for the waitlist page. Okay, number 3, the third thing you can do to maximize your launch profits with a tiny audience is being strategic with how you price and structure your offers. Now, if you want to make $10,000 in sales, you can sell a $100 offer to 100 people or a $1,000 offer to 10 people. And when you have a small audience, it's going to be way easier to sell to 10 people than it is going to be to 100 people because you just don't have that kind of reach yet. And it's actually not much harder to sell a $1,000 offer than a $100 offer. In my experience, I found it sometimes actually easier, provided that I've nurtured that audience really well. If you really do want to sell a $100 offer, then you do also need to think about what kind of upsells you can potentially add to it to maximize that launch profit. For example, can you give somebody the option to add on one-on-one coaching to the offer at checkout? Can they tick a box to add 3 coaching sessions for $1,000, and that's increasing the order value. And then also starting to think about what is the next step after this offer. If someone buys my $100 offer and then there's no way for them to work with you after they finished that offer, then your lifetime sales from this one person in your audience is $100. And since you don't have a lot of people in your audience, you're not really maximizing the amount of sales you can make. But if they finish your offer and then there's something else there that they now need help with and you can help them with, and they sign up for another offer, whether it's $100, $500, you've now increased your sales from that person in your audience. Okay, the fourth thing you can do to make more sales, maximize your profits in your next launch with a small audience is intentionally and consistently showing up to grow your audience. Social media isn't really an audience growth tool anymore, but most people still treat it like it is. And I like to think of it as more of a place to nurture your existing audience. So instead, how are you intentionally getting in front of your audience? When I say intentionally getting in front of your audience, that does not mean showing up on social media, right? Intentionally getting in front of new audiences, I should say, does not mean showing up on social media because the algorithm's not really showing your content to new people. And if you are struggling to reach new people right now, guess what? You can't keep doing more of the same thing and hoping that by just doing the same thing, something's going to change one day. You have to try something new, and it's probably going to feel really scary and hard because doing something new is always going to be uncomfortable. And that something new might look like doing podcast interviews on somebody else's show to get in front of your ideal clients. It might look like doing collaborations and partnerships. It might look like working with affiliates. networking, going to events, speaking at events, wherever you can get physically or virtually in front of new audiences. And then you can send them back and say, hey, follow me on Instagram or follow me wherever, or join my email list, whatever. That's fine. But we need to actually get in front of those new people first. We can't rely on the algorithm to show us to those new people. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up with a question that I get asked quite a lot, which is, should you invest in paid ads for the first launch of a new offer? And my answer to this is it depends. Can you invest that money into paid ads with an expectation of zero return and be okay with that? Because in reality, you don't know how your launch is going to convert the first time. You don't know until you get your offer out there and you ask people to pay money for it. And the same offer that has been launched with two completely different strategies, two completely different versions of messaging, can have two completely different results. You don't know what's going to land just yet, which is why launching is really an experiment. A lot of the time, it is testing, tweaking. Let's see if this messaging works. Let's see if this messaging works. We still, even though we've launched Launch Magic like 6 times, 7 times, I've lost count. Every time we launch it, we tweak the messaging a little bit to see if we can optimize it and make it better. And yes, you can do a lot of audience research. You really do need to do some audience research. But even all audience research in the world won't guarantee that your launch will succeed until you get it out there and you test it. Now, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm opening up doors to Launch Magic again for the second time this year, the second and final time this year. Join me inside Launch Magic. You can create a rinse and repeat launch strategy to make more sales of your digital products and offers, more on-demand cash injections, and more freedom in your business anytime that you want it. You can get on the waitlist, and if you're on the waitlist, you will also score that invite to my free virtual event where I'm teaching Module 1 of Launch Magic for free. Shoot me a DM at stephtayler.co, send me the word magic, and I'll add you to the waitlist. Or if you prefer the website version, go to stephtayler.co/magic and you can join the waitlist over there. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Catch you next time.